Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. David Apple, Head of Customer Success and Sales at Notion. Well, welcome, David.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, good to catch up with you. So it's been we met last year, or caught up last year in San Francisco when we were doing SaaStock West Coast. When we were able to run in-person conferences at the time in a pre sort of coronavirus world, and actually I guess known each other for a few years, and you've been attending or speaking at a few SaaStock conferences in the past. Nice to catch up after just less than a year. How are you, first of all? How are things in San Francisco with obviously everything that's going on with coronavirus?
Yeah, I'm doing it, I think, as well as I can be doing. This is my 5th week working from home now, so I'm growing out the beard and haven't had a proper haircut in too long. And adding to the stress for me personally, my wife is due in less than 6 weeks, so with the situation in the hospitals, it's always a little stressful. Yeah. But besides that, I think like feeling positive. I'm fortunate that my family and I are healthy, and also fortunate to be working for a company, Notion, that will survive the crisis. And yeah, so overall feeling gratitude and stress.
Gratitude and stress. All right, good stuff. Well, look, David. Obviously, I know you, but you know, for our audience, we got some insights that you're in San Francisco, that you're expecting a baby, that you've got 5 weeks of facial hair. But who are you? Like, who is David Apple as a person, and how have you ended up, you know, in San Francisco working for Notion? What's a little bit of your background and your journey?
Sure. I'll keep it. I'll try to keep it relatively short, but so I'm actually, I was born in the US, but I grew up in France, so I'm a dual citizen. And I went to university to study mechanical engineering and worked as a mechanical engineer for 8 years of my career in France and in London. Then I did an MBA because I wanted to get more on the customer facing side of things. And after my MBA, I moved to Israel, where I started working in tech. My first role was implementation, where it married kind of the technical experience, like the mechanical engineering, with the business side. And then I evolved towards a sales role. I ended up VP sales of that startup. It was a great 2 years. Then I moved to Barcelona with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and just got lucky and met the founders of Typeform through a mutual friend. And then kind of was at the right place at the right time. Joined Typeform to run sales. At Typeform, our biggest challenge was actually not top of the funnel, but rather retention. So the founders asked me to refocus and focus on customer success and how to figure out how to retain our customers better, which was an amazing journey for those almost 5 years. The last year of that was after we raised our Series B at Typeform. We decided to open an office in San Francisco, and the founders asked me if I'd be willing to move here and open up the office. So I did that for a year, and long story short, I was fortunate the COO of Notion was hiring for sales and customer success and had heard somehow good things about me, and reached out to me, and Notion just felt like too good of an opportunity to miss out on. So I've been at Notion for the past year. My role when I joined was sales and customer success. The first year I was fully focused on sales because we didn't have enterprise customers. It didn't really make sense to build out a customer success team without enterprise customers. And the first year went better than expected. So now we've built out the sales team, and I'm refocusing now away from sales. We have a great sales team in place, and I'm focusing now on the customer success side of things.
Okay, awesome. And for those that don't know Notion, what is it? Give some background into what it does, how old the company is, the size of the company, is it venture backed, and so on?
Sure. So when I joined Notion, there were 13 of us. That I had used Notion for 2 years at Typeform before I actually bought it at Typeform, before I joined Notion. So I was familiar with the product. It's a really great product. It's basically an all-in-one workspace where you can have your notes, your docs, your tasks, your projects, and kind of like your whole internal knowledge base or wiki. So I ended up using it for everything at Typeform, and excited to join them. The company has grown in the past year from, as I mentioned, 13 to there's a little bit under 50 of us now. We don't share our revenue publicly, but we recently, just last week, raised a round of investment where we raised $50 million at a $2 billion valuation. So it's, again, I just feel very lucky to be part of this journey. Having joined early and seen, I was the first hire for sales and customer success, which was the same case at Typeform. And yeah. Anything else that I forgot?
No. I think that's good. You seem to have a nose for a good company and good timing as well. And you love a product-led growth company. So both like Typeform and Notion are great platforms, and certainly from a user experience perspective.
Yeah, actually, one thing that's really interesting about both of those companies is they're both have a freemium model. So very bottoms up, people can start using it for free, and once they get value, they can choose to upgrade to get more value. And what else was I going to say about them? Yes, they're both horizontal products. So in the sense that, you know, if you're buying, I don't know, a marketing automation tool, your persona is the VP of marketing that you're trying to sell to. At Typeform and at Notion, everybody from the company can use those tools. So it presents a larger opportunity because you can sell to everybody, but it also presents a larger challenge of like, who do we market to? Who do we build features to? What's our sales pitch? Stuff like that. Awesome.
So we want to, you've given us there a bit of your background to Notion and the story of you joining them, and also, I guess, the growth and, I mean, incredible valuation of, you know, on that last round, to a team of 50 people at a 2 billion valuation company. But I think it goes to show, again, I think just in terms of like the excitement around the product, the company, the great product itself, you know, and kind of seeing that kind of grow. It's definitely like, I would say, like the hot company, hot SaaS right now, in my opinion. So yeah, like I say, we picked a winner. We're yet to see if you guys win, but you're certainly you know, kind of on that path. So as you said, like, you've built out the customer success and sales function, more focus on CSM at the moment, and obviously your background in customer success is second to none. So we want to really talk a little bit about you know, the return of investment or of a CSM, and kind of get your views on that. And so if you want to kind of share that, and let's kind of take that from there.
Yeah. I have a controversial opinion around the ROI of a CSM. I basically, I wrote an article about this, but I believe that nobody is able to calculate or can calculate reliably the ROI of the CSM. And that's because to calculate the return on investment of an individual in a team, you need to know you need to be able to calculate the impact that they're making. And you need to know what the baseline was before that person was on the team, or if that person was not on the team. And we can go into more detail, but basically, I don't think that we are able to calculate that baseline. And I also don't think we can capture all of the impact that a CSM makes.
So how then, with that viewpoint, how do you start to scale a CSM sort of organization?
So the perspective I have is we all know that for sure customer success brings value to a SaaS business because it's a recurring revenue, and to keep people paying every month or every year, they need to be successful with the product, and that's the purpose of the customer success team, especially in a product-driven company. So the question is not whether or not we should have a customer success team, but rather how big should that team be? And basically what I suggest is having a kind of a mental model of how we have a certain idea of the size of the portfolio of customers that a CSM can handle. What if we increase that portfolio by 50%? What touch points would we remove? And how would that ratio of like the cost efficiency of the CSM versus the impact that they make. How does that change as you add 50% more accounts, or if you remove 50% of the accounts? And some large companies may have the luxury of actually experimenting with that, but most companies, certainly the companies I work for, don't have the scale where you can actually do that. So it's more once a quarter or twice a year or whatever, go through your customer journey and your touch points, and think about the size of the portfolio of customers that each CSM manages, and just go through the mental model of saying, like, what if we increase that by 50%? What if we reduce that by 50%? And then remove touch points, add other touch points, and basically aim to be as cost effective as possible while not removing the whole impact that you can make.
So, and within Notion, if you're kind of happy to share, then sort of you came in to head up customer success and sales. What did the team look like? Did you inherit a team? Were you the first hire within that space? And then how did you go about then over this last year building out that team?
Yeah, so I was the first hire, which is exciting and also challenging because there's literally everything to do, from the first sales pitch to choosing a CRM to changing CRMs to like signing up for Calendly, like everything. I think that the first question I asked myself was, what does my focus need to be? Because I'm alone and therefore there's only so much I can do. Should my focus be on expanding our existing customers? Should my focus be on landing new customers? And should my focus be on landing new customers that are kind of low friction to land? So like we have a team plan and we were building an enterprise plan. Should I be focused on selling the team plan or the enterprise plan? And ultimately what we landed on after a bunch of back and forths was my unique focus was landing new customers onto our enterprise plan. If I landed a deal on the team plan, I didn't even report it. I would consider that to be a failure. And the goal was to learn why I was closing certain deals and why I was losing other deals, so that we can continuously iterate. I guess the mindset was, if we're going to be a large successful company, which hopefully we're on the track of being that now, we need to figure out how to go up market. We need to have an enterprise sales motion, as you know, the great companies, like Slack and Zoom, they all do that very well, and that's part of why they've been so successful. So that's why my focus was that. So it was less about maximizing the amount of revenue I could actually generate, and more about how do we learn as much as possible in the short term so that we're setting ourselves up for success in the long term.
Were there any specific sort of retention challenges that you've sort of like faced and then solved problems, or has it been like pretty, like once you've got a customer, they're just kind of sticking around and growing?
So again, I think in the idea of focus, retention is obviously something we could work on, but our net retention is actually above 100%. So it didn't feel like a big problem, or B, like that I could make a clear measurable impact by focusing on that. So rather than doing like dabbling in all the different areas, I just said, I'm not even going to think about that yet. And only now am I starting to think about those things a year later when I'm focused on customer success.
Is it typical that somebody, let's say of your seniority, comes in as that first hire of customer success and sales? So isn't it normally you get somebody maybe a little bit more kind of like junior or generalist and so on? But what was the rationale there for Notion to hire you?
Yeah. I think it's abnormal from both perspectives. So maybe I'll share both of my perspectives. One is I was a VP at the two previous roles I was at. So I have certain expectations in terms of compensation, and often startups can't afford that or don't want to pay that yet. So it makes more sense for them to hire somebody a little bit more junior, and maybe have somebody that's more experienced as an advisor that can just pop in every once in a while and make sure things are going on the right track. So that's a little bit of normal, but Notion, when they hired me, were already profitable and therefore could afford a little bit more than the average startup at 13 people. And then from my perspective, I'm a little bit weird as well, in the sense that my favorite I think there's like my favorite part of the journey I had with Typeform. I joined Typeform when there were 15 people as well. My favorite part of the journey was building at the beginning, and I think. Of course, there's an ego thing when you build a large team. At Typeform, my team was 40 people, and I also love managing people and motivating them, and so I enjoy that part of the journey. But really, my favorite part is the early stage. So I didn't see starting as the number one person as a negative. I actually saw it as this is like an amazing opportunity that literally only comes around once per company. So that's why I jumped on the opportunity. But I think most people who had been a VP at a larger company might see that as too risky and might prefer to wait a little bit longer after like a Series A or Series B to join.
What I'm seeing a lot of at the moment, given in terms of like companies leading themselves through, these kind of strange and uncertain times, a lot of the kind of good advice or one piece of advice that often stands out is around talking to your customers, and even more so at this time. Is this something that like Notion has adopted? And then how do you go about that? Because I imagine that you have thousands of customers from, small people or small businesses through to the bigger businesses. So do you only talk to the big guys, or like how does it work?
Yeah. I'd start by saying that at Notion, we have a really great culture, which starts from our founders of they really are obsessed about knowing what our customers want and what the feedback is. And we have this great feedback loop process between all the teams and the founders, and mainly the product team. So that we're always, the voice of the customer is always something that's present. We even have Sesame Street stuffed animals that we put in meeting rooms, and they represent our customers. So that we're like, the customer's always in the room and we should always be thinking about them. So definitely something that we think a lot about. And I think, I imagine a big part of the early success before I joined of making a great product that people love. And then, so when I joined, the first month I just scheduled a lot of calls. I think it was just under 50 with customers to learn about, learn what I could learn about them and about our product. And so the customers I chose to speak with were the customers that were most relevant for what I was trying to learn. So it tended to be the larger customers. When I also trained on the support team, I was supporting all types of customers. So I still learned from everybody. But because my focus was on how do I close large deals, I tended to speak with larger companies to see what was working for them with Notion, what wasn't, and what features they were missing, stuff like that.
We've seen, or I've kind of seen anecdotally and heard, and I haven't necessarily spoken to too many companies that are necessarily kind of going through this, but like, again, like through these times, like one thing like a lot of businesses are doing are cutting costs, right? And with that, they're looking through the SaaS tools that they use and like seeing, which ones are kind of critical, but we're cutting costs across the board, and so therefore there are a lot of SaaS tools that then are probably suffering right now, a lot of churn. And I don't know if you're seeing that again, like through the ecosystem in San Francisco, but have you got any kind of like thoughts and advice in terms of what companies could do to mitigate against that? Is there anything that you can do? What are your thoughts? And has Notion experienced any of these kind of problems?
So we're pretty, again, fortunate at Notion that Notion is a very sticky product. Once you've implemented it, you have all of your documentation in there, and you're kind of less likely to want to churn. What we've seen more of is contraction, where some of our customers, unfortunately, are facing tough times and have to let people go. And as a result, they reduce the amount of seats they have in Notion. We haven't seen a large increase in churn as of yet, but I think that could be coming. Like the trends are going upward. So if the trend continues from March, we'll see that. And your other question, any advice for?
SaaS companies that are facing like a lot of churn right now, just because like business is going out of business, can't do much about that, but maybe they're cutting costs. Is there anything that you can be proactive around to kind of help, like make sure that you're not one of the SaaS apps that are being cut?
Yeah, I think if hopefully you've been doing this throughout your relationship with your customer, but basically making sure you're demonstrating value, showing them like the analytics of how they're using your product and the value that they're getting out of it. Um, I think that's one thing that's important, and sometimes people don't know how to find that information or don't understand how to analyze it. Um, and then I guess another thing, like of course, it depends on the health of your own financial situation, but I think just having empathy for your customers. So some customers may say, "Hey, I really don't want to stop using your tool, but we literally cannot afford it. It's either we use your tool or we let go of like two more people." Um, so maybe it's being a little bit having the empathy and saying, "Well, we'll give you a buy for the next like 2-3 months," because in SaaS the business model is such that our incremental costs of having that extra customer are not really that high. Whereas if they churn and then, I don't know, it feels like that's an opportunity for building a stronger, longer term relationship. But of course, some companies can't afford to do that. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't have any like specific tactical advice, but just listen to your customers and see how you can help their business.
Cool. No, it's good advice. Final kind of couple of questions as I know we come to the end of the show. Given that you've got a good eye or a good ear for a hot SaaS company, what are your next kind of tips, if you have any, or exciting SaaS companies that people should be looking for to either use as a product, because Typeform and Notion are kind of great to use, or maybe even apply for a career app, because David Apple says they're the next big thing.
Notion.
Okay. You're hiring then.
Notion. We're hiring a lot for now in San Francisco, but eventually, hopefully in more places. But yeah, definitely Notion. I think there's a lot of great products out there that I admire. I really like what the team at eFounders does, the team out of Paris. They've built a lot of great products, and there's a few more that are just coming out that I think the concept is exciting. Yeah, then the rest would be our competitors, so I don't think I'll mention them.
Okay. All right. Good.
But thanks for asking. I think there is a part of like I love beautiful products and products that I feel have helped me, but there's a huge part of luck in this. I joined both Typeform and Notion before they raised like an official round, and so it could have really gone either way. The company I joined in Israel didn't go well, and I think I got lucky.
2 out of 3, not bad. Two good ones. And kind of final question, and I'm sort of tweaking it. I have to say, how do you stay healthy and sane? As you kind of in the position that you are, like running business. In this instance, I'm going to say, how do you stay healthy and sane in times of being in lockdown and like coronavirus and so on? So, what have you been doing? What's your way to stay fit, both body and mind?
Yeah, great question. I failed my first 2 weeks and then realized that I had to change things, and I've been better since then. I think what I've learned, there's a few things that I've learned. One is the first week I would just, normally you have a meeting, you get up from your desk, you go to your meeting room, you come back, like you're kind of moving around. At home, you're always in the same place. And I would sit for like virtually 8 to 10 hours straight, except for like a bathroom break and a lunch break. And that's not good. So I've been forcing myself to get up more often. I also have started more of a routine of getting up a little bit extra early, doing like some morning stretches. And also mentally, I stopped thinking of this as like, how do I survive this week? And it kind of like, if you're in survivor mode, I think you're kind of waiting for that light at the end of the tunnel, which we never know when that's going to be. And that's a little bit frustrating. And I think it's exhausting if that's the mindset. Whereas I've shifted my mindset a little bit more to, I don't know how long this is going to last, and I'm just going to make the most of this and set this up in a way that I'm enjoying it rather than I'm just surviving it. So I went to our office and grabbed my office chair and monitor and set up a nice desk for myself, and I just feel a lot more comfortable now than I did in the first couple of weeks. But yeah, so those would be that's my own personal experience.
Yeah. Well, no, appreciate you sharing that. And I mean, similarly, that first week where everybody went remote, I noticed myself and a lot of the team were complaining about how tired they were and the headaches and stuff. And because we, as you said, we're not moving around, we were just sitting down for 8 hours and not taking enough breaks and being on video calls all day or whatever. And it was just exhausting, right? Even though we weren't physically moving as much, it was making everybody more tired. But we've got a lot better at that. And I've incorporated a bit of a routine, into my day, ensuring like morning exercise and taking a lunch break with the family, even if it's for 30, 45 minutes, and trying not to work all hours as well, right? So, give a bit of, see the family like after work. So that's important.
That's good advice. So my wife and actually my mother-in-law are here. And so it's easier for me to like get up and just spend time with them. I have a lot of empathy for people who are like living in a studio on their own or a one bedroom on their own. I think that makes it even tougher. But yeah, having like at whatever time I'm done working and I close my computer and I'm social, but again, virtually, I think that's a really good tip from you.
I'm going to change the question. How do you stay healthy and sane in lockdown with your mother-in-law?
She's genuinely awesome. I'm not just saying that. She can't hear me right now.
Yeah.
No, we're really lucky. She's been like doing a lot of the like house chores. She definitely pulls her own weight, and she's a lot of fun. So
you're just worried that she subscribes to the SaaS Revolution Show.
Well, now I'm definitely going to send her this video.
All right, good idea. All right, well, David Apple, it's been fantastic catching up with you, and for you to kind of share your insights and learnings, from Notion and thoughts around CSM to our audience. So, thanks so much for being a guest on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.